A common issue for pro se litigants is oftentimes vacating a default judgment. Sometimes you don't get served with a complaint, or it gets lost in the mail, or the other side just never serves it on you, maybe because they're lax or maybe because there was a clerical error, who knows. But you oftentimes run into a scenario where you have a complaint that's filed against you and you don't respond to it within the time period set forth by the court, and then that plaintiff, because you're the defendant, that plaintiff gets a default judgment, meaning whatever request they have requested in their complaint, they get simply because you didn't put in an answer. I want to talk today about issues between vacating a default judgment and what happens to the case against you. I want to clear up some common misconceptions, so stick around because that's what we're going to do inside this video. Hi, and thanks for joining me. My name's Peter Lamont. I'm a business attorney and the host of utlradio.com, your business success and legal information station. And today I want to talk specifically about what it means to vacate a default judgment and what impact, if any, that has on the case filed against you. So in other videos, we've talked about how to go about vacating a default judgment. We've talked about what it is. But, I often receive questions about the vacated default judgment, and people oftentimes confuse vacating a judgment with having their case dismissed. So I'm going to tell you a story about a call that I received a few weeks ago. A gentleman calls up and he says, I've been handling my case pro se, and they had filed a judgment, they had obtained it, and as soon as I learned about it, I went out and I filed a motion to vacate a default judgment, just like we've talked about in the videos. And I was successful. And he called me basically to thank me for the video. He said, I want to thank you for putting up the video because I filed this motion to vacate and I won and my case was dismissed. And I said, whoa, wait, take a step back. Explain this to me. He says, a complaint was filed against me. I was never served with it. I watched your video. I learned what the legal term of art was. I learned what I'd need to show in the motion. I wrote a motion to vacate the default judgment. I filed it, and the judge granted my motion. And the judgment's vacated. I won the case. Thank you. I said, wait a minute. You got to take a step back because I think you are confusing dismissal of your case with vacating the judgment. And he said, well, I don't understand. That's why we're doing this video today. So vacating a default judgment simply means that the judgment that was entered against you has been lifted, eradicated. It's no longer there. There's no judgment against you any further. However, you didn't obtain a dismissal of your case. You didn't obtain a dismissal of the complaint filed against you. What you have done is allowed yourself an opportunity to put in an answer and defend that claim. So there's a big difference between getting a dismissal of the case filed against you and vacating the default judgment. I need to be clear on this because you have to understand that when you vacate a default judgment successfully, the judge will most often issue an order. And that order says judgment is vacated. And sometimes it will say that you, the defendant, have X amount of days to file an answer. Okay, and you need to know that. You need to be aware that you've got to file an answer to the complaint within that time period, or you could be in default again. And the more times you're in default, the less likely the court will be to vacate that. Generally speaking, when the vacation or the default is vacated and the judge issues an order and says you've got to put in an answer by X date and you don't do it, they're not going to give you a second bite at the apple, a second shot. You've blown it. So you've got to really look at that order and read it and understand it, because vacating a default does not mean your case is dismissed. It means you can now come into the case and you can try to defend yourself. So I just want to clear that up and make sure that you're aware of that. Vacating a judgment, a default judgment, means that the judgment is no longer there, and it allows you the opportunity to defend the claim. It does not mean that you have won your case. It does not mean that the case that was filed against you has gone away. Okay, be very clear on that, because this gentleman that called was so excited that he won. And I said, did you look at the court order? He said, yes, it was granted. Motion granted. I said, did you look to see if there was a deadline to file an answer? And he said, oh, I didn't look. And then a few days later, he called back and he said, you were right. I had to file an answer. I didn't understand that. So I'm hoping that this helps clear that up. If you have questions about this and you'd like to ask them, you can contact us at 973-949-3770, or you can email me at plamont@utlradio.com. I'd be happy to answer your questions or discuss your issue with you, help you get some clarity on this. I also want to thank you for watching today's video, and I want to remind you that if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when new videos are posted. And it always helps to see some comments and maybe some thumbs up if you get a chance. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It lets other people know about this station and this channel, and it's a way of helping people, which I think is something that's severely lacking in the legal community. So if you could share this, it would mean a lot to me, and you'd be helping a lot of other people as well. Finally, don't forget to also subscribe to the podcast. There's a link below, because the podcast, which is a 5-day-a-week podcast, has different information from what you're seeing here on the YouTube channel. So there's a podcast about legal Q&A and business Q&A, and there's a weekly news program, so you don't want to miss any of that. That is on the podcast only. And finally, if you want one place to find everything, including downloading our free app, being able to ask legal questions through the app for free, then you'll want to go to utlradio.com. It's our main website, and there's links to everything on the website. So check us out there, and in a few weeks we'll have a new website ready for you guys, and I'd love to hear your comments and feedback on it. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Please let your family, friends, and relatives, colleagues know about utlradio.com, your business success and legal information station. I'll see you next time.